Okay, I think we're going to have a great afternoon today. We're going out to Canton, Ohio, the Pro Football's Hall of Fame. As we just heard, at least one of our members has been out there. I have a feeling others have been there too. But what's really important about it is, in the year of the pandemic and the year of a lot of uncertainties in sports, the one that did maintain pretty much their viewership, and certainly, even though there was a dip in the Super Bowl numbers, far outpaced any of the other major sports. So football is and has been one of the most popular sports out there. And today we're going to get a very nice history of the sport, as well as a tour throughout their museum by members of the team. And they're the youth and education team. Now, I'm not sure how we fit into the youth part of it, but we certainly can use the education. So I think it's going to be an amazing day. We're going to be learning, as I said, a lot from both their director of youth services. Jerry is the director, has been there 21 years, and he left college with a sports business degree. We have Jake, who'll be joining us, and Jake is the manager of the youth and education division. He also was in sports management in college. And Nathan Martin, the third member of the team, was the coordinator of education and also had a sports management degree. So I think the three of them combined are going to be the A team from the Pro Football Hall of Fame out in Canton. So I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Jerry first.
Okay, thank you, Jeff and Liz. So I think you guys can probably just hear me just fine. And I kind of was chuckling because Liz, put it so nicely that, she wanted to mute you guys because, background noise and things like that. Let's just be honest. You guys are a rowdy group and you'd be up, so we'd have too much fun here. Honestly, I just want to stay in the background and listen to you guys chatter back and forth because I just absolutely loved it. So I want to welcome you guys to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My name is Jerry Shockey, as Jeff already alluded to. I'm the Director of Youth and Education here. I've been fortunate enough to be here since for almost 21 years now. I went to the University of Mount Union. Maybe some of you have heard of it because they're a pretty good Division III football program. They've also got a wonderful sport business program. But I literally walked across stage on a Sunday and started full-time on Monday, the day after graduation. And they haven't fired me yet. So I'm doing okay. But one thing we like to do with any group is give them a clear understanding of exactly who we are and what it is that we do. And so I might ask a few questions here throughout the program just to have you guys kind of type in, if you can, real quick to the chat function, but I'll keep it minimal. There'll typically be one-word responses, yes, no kind of things, but we'll keep them short just for the reason of the chat. But I do like to have some type of engagement. We do about 700 or 800 programs a year. I mean, just this morning we were connecting with Trine University in Indiana. Yesterday we're connecting with students, fifth grade students in Indiana as well. So we connect with students all across the country. We do this all the time with schools, and a lot of schools are at home right now, just like you guys are. So it's not typically a classroom on the other end as it has been in previous times. But we are well versed with this technology with Zoom. We do 600, 700, 800 programs a year. So we're gonna have some fun here. And I like to, even with you guys, make it engaging and interactive. And we will save about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for questions from you guys. But one of the things we like to do is always give a clear understanding of exactly who the Hall of Fame is and what it is that we do. And first of all, and you guys can type this in the chat real quick. You guys know where I'm at, right? Ohio. Does anybody know where we're at? Go ahead and see somebody type that in real quick. We're at in Ohio. Let's see who wins the prize for being the fastest typer. Jeff said he's giving $10 to whoever gets it right. All right, there we go. Canton, exactly. You guys are exactly right. So I'm going to share a screen here for just a second. You're going to see pop up. Here's our map. And if we zoom in, you will see our building here in Canton, Ohio. And then next to us is a stadium you guys might be familiar with. This is Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. This is where the NFL season kicks off every year. The very first preseason game is televised here on NBC on Thursday Night Football. At least for the last few years, it has been on Thursday Night Football on NBC. This past preseason, you guys know, the preseason was canceled in the NFL, so is our game. This is also where the induction ceremony takes place. So class of 2020 was postponed till 2021 because of COVID. But we plan on the first week in August to have a Thursday night game. a Saturday on ESPN NFL Network, inducting the class of 2020, which is headlined by guys like Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher, Troy Polamalu, but then the class of 2021. And I don't know if anybody can type in there real quick. Does anybody know any of the class members who is getting enshrined? There's a big name quarterback that's being enshrined this year. I'll give a second to see if people type these in. Manning, very good, Ben. Okay, very good, Manning. So Calvin Johnson, Charles Woodson, Tom Flores. I mean, so we've got 8 new members going to be enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But let me take you to our main entrance here and show you guys that. And then let me show you the inside of our building. Okay, and we're going to actually be going live here in a little bit throughout the day as well in our museum too. So you'll see live shots there as well. And I did see Steve posted why was Canton chosen for the NFL Hall of Fame. We will actually go to that here in just a minute and talk about that of why that is. And so what I want to do though is give a clear understanding of exactly who the Hall of Fame is and what it is that we do. And one of the best ways to do that is just to show you this video. Now, just for the sake of time, I won't do the whole video. It's about 4 minutes long. We'll do the first minute and a half, but it really talks about why football is more than a game, what it teaches about life, and what kind of character qualities it teaches. Because I think it's important, even no matter what age. I mean, obviously, character is still being matured and grown in us. But if you can imagine, this is something we share with kindergarten through 12th grade students, college students, all across the country and all over the world, this message of what football teaches about life. And so let me just show you a quick 90-second clip of this.
It is America's passion. We live for it, hunger for it, cheer for it, and are inspired by it. But it is so much more than a game. We love it on our youth fields, in our high schools, at our colleges, in our stadiums, and on our TVs. But it is so much more than a game. We love those who coach it, play it, broadcast it, and even officiate it. Well, most of the time. But it is so much more than a game. Football is a classroom for commitment. It is a laboratory for learning important life virtues and values like teamwork, perseverance, responsibility, courage, compassion, and character. Life skills that, if mastered, will not only make you a Hall of Famer, but more importantly, a great father or mother, husband or wife, son or daughter, friend, teacher, preacher, soldier, police officer, firefighter, or citizen of our communities.
Okay, and if you can imagine with young people, you know, we expand upon that to just talk about how football, we believe football is the ultimate team sport. I mean, we really do. I mean, we're unapologetic about that. Now, we believe all sports teach amazing things, whether baseball, basketball, soccer, golf, volleyball, but football is just so unique because what you have is a group of people of all different shapes, sizes, colors, skills, abilities, and giftings that come together in love and unity in pursuit of one common goal. And there's no other sport that has quite the variety, if you will, of shapes and sizes and skills and abilities that are out on the field at the same time working together. And really it represents teams in real life so well. And so this is a message that we love to share with our young people about overcoming obstacles, about being good teammates in all areas of life. And so not only just on the football field or in sports, but with families, with classrooms, with businesses. And this is something, to be honest with you guys, that we take this, if you can imagine, we take this to Fortune 500 companies and CEOs and executives to talk about what football teaches about life, because what a CEO doesn't want his team to function the way, in many ways, how an NFL team functions on the field, where everybody's utilizing their unique gifts, their unique abilities, completely committed to the betterment of the team before self. And so football has these valuable lessons that are built right in. So our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, preserve its history, promote its values, and celebrate excellence everywhere. Our vision is, it's not just the past, the future. It's not just about Canton, it's the world. It's not just a great museum for football, and it is a great museum for football. It's a message of excellence everywhere. Our values, our commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence. And so, and as Steve already alluded to and asking the question, one of the most popular questions we get when people come here to the Pro Football Hall of Fame is, why Canton, Ohio? Why out of all the places? So people in Latrobe, Pennsylvania are still upset that the Hall of Fame's not in Latrobe. But there's actually historic reasons why. Number one is the NFL was actually founded here. September 17th, 1920, just a couple miles down the road from here, there was an auto dealership. It was called Ralph Hay's Hupmobiles. A Hupmobile being an old 1920 style car. Ralph Hay was the owner of that dealership. He was also the owner of the Canton Bulldogs. And so they organized this league in 1920. Guys like Jim Thorpe, George Hallis were present at this meeting. And they organized a league at that time called the American Professional Football Association. When 1922, it ended up changing its name to the National Football League, and it's been known as that ever since. Now, there are 14 teams that were part of that original league. Now, trivia question for you guys, real quick, before we send it to our museum. But the question I have for you guys, there are 2 teams today that still play in the NFL that were a part of that original league back in 1920. Who knows it? Go ahead and give some guesses in there. Bears are one of them. Very good. Does anybody know the other one?
Who cares?
Packers are 1921, so they're close. They're third oldest. Giants are 1925. So they're Bears and Giants. It's actually, a lot of people don't guess this one. It's actually the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals. And technically, the Cardinals are the oldest professional team, because even before the NFL started in 1920, there was what we refer to as a pre-NFL years. And so from 1892 to 1919, the first pro player, the first person that we know of that we have documented evidence of being paid, was a guy back in 1892 by the name of William Pudge Heffelfinger. And he was paid $500 for one game to play. So from 1892 to 1919 is what we refer to as the pre-NFL years. Well, the Cardinals were actually, before the NFL even started, they were playing in Chicago all the way back to 1898. So they're technically the oldest professional team, but them and the Bears are tied as 2 oldest teams in the NFL. So you have the NFL being founded, that Canton Bulldogs team, one of the early powerhouses, the first back-to-back NFL champions back in 1922 and 1923. They played here in Canton, Ohio. And then the last reason, Jim Thorpe actually played on the team.
Jim Thorpe.
So many of you probably know that name.
They named a town after him.
Yeah, Jim Thorpe, PA, exactly.
That's right. I live 10 miles from there.
That's right. And so it was actually,
right.
if you think about that, you know, they were the first back-to-back NFL champions back in 1922 and 23, the Bulldogs. But Thorpe played pro football, played pro baseball. But then on top of that, in Stockholm, Sweden in 1912 in the Olympics, won 2 Olympic gold medals in the decathlon and pentathlon. So it's impossible to compare today's athletes of athletes to yesterday, but in any era to do what Jim Thorpe did, it's really unheard of. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go to our teammates out in our museum, Jake and Nathan. I think Nathan's on standby to talk to you a little bit about the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Jerry, thank you so much for sending it out here. And guys, like Jerry said, welcome to Canton, Ohio. Welcome to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'm actually in our first floor, the first floor of our rotunda. And in this gallery, we go decade by decade through the history of professional football. And actually, the NFL started in 1920, but we've got to go back, like Jerry mentioned, to 1892 to get our first ever professional football player. And I'm standing next to, you can't really see it, I'll zoom in here in a second, but the accounting ledger that the Allegheny Athletic Club used on November 12th, 1892 to pay a guy by the name of William Pudge Heffelfinger $500, which equates to about $6,000 today for one game. It was groundbreaking because it's the first time that it's ever been documented that someone was paid to play the game of football. It turned out really well for Allegheny. They were playing their arch rival, the Pittsburgh Athletic Club. Heffelfinger scored the only touchdown of the game, scooped up a fumble, ran it back for a touchdown. So Allegheny won the game 4-0 because the touchdown back then was only worth 4 points. But he is the first person that we document here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a professional football player. And the other items in this gallery, in this exhibit, are just equipment that would have been used during that era, during those early years. And I know Jerry's going to talk a little bit more about the helmet or the face gear that the players would have been using. So Jerry, back to you.
All righty. Thank you, Nathan. And we'll be coming back to them quite a bit. So they're scurrying around our museum trying to give you guys behind the scenes looks. And so you notice, first of all, I put on gloves here because it's a museum, and actually we're a world-class museum. We just received a couple years ago accreditation to the American Museum Association, the same accreditation that only the top percentage of museums across the country have, including places like the Smithsonian. So we always joke that we treat a a Peyton Manning jersey the way an art museum would treat a 2,000-year-old piece of art, or the way a natural history museum would treat an old dinosaur bone or something like that. And so what we have here is the nose guard. And the nose guard would have been worn, as you saw, there were straps that went around the head, but basically it was worn like this. What the players did was they bit down on this part here. There were straps that went through and went around the head, and it was used for protection for the face. If you can imagine a piece of hard rubber being on your face and the ridges sitting right on your nose, it actually made things worse. It didn't even help. It made things worse. And technically, it was not used for good purposes either, because in those days, you could get away with this. They'd actually take this helmet off, and it would be on a string or something. They'd swing it around and actually hit each other too as they were playing the game. And so the helmet did not pan out very well. So this was not used for that much longer. But if we go into it, I'm going to go ahead and put my other glove on here, just so I can grab with both hands. We move on to the turn of the century, 1910s, 1920s. The leather helmet. All right. And there's a lot of different variations of leather helmet, but the bottom line is, the game, I don't know if you guys know this, the game was almost disbanded. So back in 1904, Teddy Roosevelt was actually planning on banning the game, even though he loved the game. He's a Rough Rider. I mean, all those things. He loved the game because what it taught about toughness and things like that. But there were so many deaths in college football the one year, like in 1902, 1903, there were like 18 deaths because of head injuries. And so the game evolved for protection. So that meeting that he called together the leaders of in football is where they started implementing new rules and creating a gap between the offense and defense, getting rid of the wedge formation, which was very dangerous. The flying wedges you guys might have heard of, those formations were very dangerous. So, and then the forward pass was introduced as well. Wasn't really used that much, but nonetheless, it was introduced. But this was an attempt to obviously protect the top of the head, to protect those head-to-head collisions. So we're going to throw it back out to our museum to Jake. I think he's on standby. I think you guys went backwards on me, Jake. What are you guys doing to me?
No, we didn't go backwards. We're following that script you guys got right there.
Are you? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
So yeah. Welcome, guys. Again, I will echo what Nathan's saying. Welcome to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I am in probably the most iconic room in the building. Don't want to take anything else away from all the other great parts, but this is truly what everybody comes to see, our Hall of Fame gallery, where all of our great bronze busts are put on display. And it kind of, before I talk about this guy right here behind me, who played when that helmet was being worn, kind of means, just tell you what it means to have one of these bronze busts. In all of football, Pee Wee to the NFL, all of games history, there's been about 300 million people that step on the field to play the game. In college, there's been about 5 million players. And in the professional football league, there's been only about, the 29 to 30,000 people have been paid to either play, coach, or administer the game of professional football. And in this room right now, after our class of 2021 is enshrined during Enshrinement Week powered by Johnson Controls, we're going to have 354 bronze busts, 354 Hall of Famers. These are the best of the best. These guys just didn't, as we say here, they didn't roll out of bed great. They had to put the work in. They put the time in to get this bronze bust. And you truly ask them, what's the greatest award that they want to get? At a team level, they want to win a Super Bowl. They want to give back to the community, the Walter Payton Man of the Year. But at the individual player level, this is what they want. This showcases all the time and commitment they gave. Some of those values Jerry talked about at the beginning, to their craft, to their sport. in football. I am in front of a guy's bust who played in that 1920s. This guy's name is Earl, or you might know him as Curly Lambeau. He played in the 1920s, great player. So good, in fact, he had to go to a college, you might have heard of it, called Notre Dame. Well, he got to Notre Dame and got really, really sick. So after his illness, he decided, you know, I got to go home. I got to heal up. I got to make sure I take care of myself first. So he did that. He stopped playing football. Well, once he healed up, he's like, well, I just can't sit around on my couch and mope all day that I'm not playing football. I got to go out and get a job. So he got a job working at a local packing company. A few years after working at this packing company, he's like, you know what, man, you know, I miss football. I want to get back in the game. So he did, we know what everybody does when they don't like their job. He bought a football team. Working at a packing company, I might have given away, but using that chat there, I can see these answers pop up. Do you guys have any guesses on the team that the Curly Lambeau founded, the Curly that he bought? What is that team that he purchased and created? I see him flying in, the Green Bay Packers. That's right. And you know, I might be a little biased in here, but they are obviously the best team in the NFL. He started the Green Bay Packers. That's actually how the Packers got their nickname, being named after that Acme packing company. As we know, Lambeau Field, one of the most iconic stadiums in all of sports, specifically in the NFL. So that's it from me in front of here. Good old Curly Lambeau's bust in Hall of Fame gallery. I'm going to throw it back to Jerry, who's going to take us a little further down the timeline using another pretty cool looking helmet. So Jerry, back to you.
Thank you, Jake. And my apologies, Jake. You were correct and I was wrong. I was off script here. So try to blame you. It's, you know, I mean, it is what it is. But anyhow, so we look at, as we go into the 30s and 40s, we go into a harder leather, if you will, that had, you know, a fiber shell on the inside, leather on the outside, you know, starting to look more and more like a helmet. And obviously with today's helmets, you know, it's missing a face mask. It's missing the logos on the side. And we're gonna get that here in just a second, but it's starting to evolve into more and more. So if we go from here to here to here, but I know Nathan's back in our museum to talk a little bit about who put the first logo, how that happened. I don't know. Maybe we should ask. Does anybody know, before we go to Nathan, does anybody know what NFL team actually had the first logo? See if anybody gets it, and then we'll send it out to Nathan. Any guesses here? No guesses, no takers. Okay. All right. Well, we will go to Nathan to talk about who that team was and what happened.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. And I do have a guess, and I actually have the right answer. And as you guys can see, I'm standing in front of a Los Angeles Rams jersey, but this is a unique place to be because Jerry just showed you guys a helmet from the 1930s, 1940s era. I'm standing in the Pro Football Today gallery. This gallery right here highlights some of the greatest accomplishments that are happening in the NFL today. It's players like Aaron Rodgers. It's players like Tom Brady and Christian McCaffrey, Lamar Jackson, and so many others that when they make a big, you know, milestone or record-breaking performance, we'll get something from that game, and it's on display in this gallery. And I'm standing next to this Rams jersey, and no, this isn't Aaron Donald, you know, Defensive Player of the Year. This is Michael Brockers, his teammate on the defensive line, who's a captain for the Los Angeles Rams, and he wore this jersey to kick off this 2020 season because this past offseason, the Rams did a rebrand. They kind of changed their logo a little bit, but if you look over here at the helmet has the same design that it seems to have had forever. And actually, I want to read here from our display. It says, Los Angeles in their iconic horn emblem, which was the first helmet logo in the history of the NFL. And they used that same example because in 1948, back then, players didn't make a lot of money playing professional football. And there was a player by the name of Fred Gerke in 1948. His offseason job or his other career was as an artist, was as a painter. And he said, for me to make some extra money, I'm going to charge the team, I'm going to charge the franchise and offer my services to paint a logo on the helmets. Charged $1 a helmet or so and painted a logo that looks very similar to what the Los Angeles Rams still use today. And they became the first team in the NFL. And now all teams except Northeast Ohio's own, the Cleveland Browns, have a logo on their helmet, but it's all because of Fred Gerke back in 1948 with the Los Angeles Rams. So Jerry, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. And yeah, so Fred Gerke, 1948. And so within about 10 years, just about every team got a logo on their helmet. Now, as Nathan already alluded to, the Browns are the only team that don't have a logo on their helmet. And then does anybody know what NFL team is the only team that has a logo on one side of their helmet? Does anybody know that answer?
Yeah.
See if anybody gets that. It's actually the, all right, there we go. There we go. Paul got it. The Steelers, very good. The Steelers, they only have a logo on one side of the helmet. Now, if we fast forward into the 50s, this is when it made the movement away from the leather, because there were attempts to put face masks on these helmets, but we know one good tug and that thing would rip right off. And so it evolved to the plastic. This is the Rams helmet from that time. You look on the inside, there's something called a web suspension system. And that web suspension system might look familiar to some of you guys if you served in the military. I mean, it's very similar to what military helmets for a lot of years had, kind of a web suspension system just like that. And so, yeah, the face mask, and we'll get that here in just a minute, the chin strap now is a lot more secure. But I'm going to send this back over to Jake, who is in our Hall of Fame gallery, to talk a little bit more about this face mask and about who might have made it popular.
Yes, thanks, Jerry. I have moved down 1, 2, 3, 4 panels here in our Hall of Fame gallery to the class of 1967. That first class I was in front of was from when we opened here, our inaugural class of 1963. But I'm down in 1967. I'm in front of a lot of great guys here. Bobby Lane, Chuck Bednarik, the last two-way player in the NFL, Ken Strong from the New York Giants. But the one I want to point out is this guy down here at the bottom. This guy's name, you might have heard of him, especially if you're from Northeast Ohio. His name is Paul Brown. Now, Paul Brown, as we know, was a great innovator, one of a coach that succeeded at all levels. He won a high school championship here in Massillon with the Massillon Tigers. He won a collegiate championship, and I got to say this right, at the Ohio State University. And then obviously we know his success in the professional realm with the Browns and also the Cincinnati Bengals. But we're in front of Paul Brown to talk a little bit, and Jerry kind of alluded to it, is Paul Brown, obviously great innovator, had a lot of firsts in the NFL. And you talk about the face mask, and Paul Brown was actually the first coach to utilize the face mask with his organization. His quarterback, back when he coached for the Browns, guy you might have heard of, his name's Otto Graham, fellow Hall of Famer. He got a real bad facial injury one game, had to sit out a few weeks. But once he came back to the team, started practicing again, but he kept getting hit in the face and kept getting re-injured. So, I would probably do the same thing. I went up to go up to coach and say, hey, coach, I'm tired of getting hit in the face. Is there anything you can do to help prevent that? Coach Paul Brown put the face mask on the helmet. And then it has evolved over time. It started just kind of a plastic shield, evolved there to the tubular face mask that Jerry showed you. And now you'll see as we go down the road here how much the helmet and the face mask specifically has evolved. But Paul Brown also was the first person to put a radio in the helmet. You see quarterbacks today, if they're in a dome or they're in a loud stadium, that they're going to cover up their ears to hear that play call come in from the sideline over the two-way radio system that the coach has. And if you're ever watching the game and you see a guy with a green sticker on the back of their helmet, that signifies that they have that radio system in their helmet to communicate or at least listen to the play call coming in from the coach. Coach Brown did that way back in the 1950s. Few problems though. First of all, it was illegal, probably first and foremost. But secondly, it didn't work very well. If it was a nice clear day, I'm looking outside. It's a pretty clear day here in Ohio. So it would probably work today. But not only could he hear his quarterback could hear his coach, you could hear the local radio station as well as the local airport. So it didn't work very well. And secondly, it was illegal. The NFL found out that he was doing it, told him to stop. So Coach Brown said, hey, you know what? I'm good. I'll stop. It didn't become legal to have a radio in your helmet until the late 1990s. So Paul Brown was nearly 50 years ahead of his time using technology that you see used in every single NFL game today on both sides of the football. So we know here in Northeast Ohio, Paul Brown was great for the Cleveland Browns organization. So great for the game of football and truly left an impact on the game. But not only did Paul Brown leave an impact when you're looking at the game, he helped truly change the landscape of professional football when you talk about the integration of the game. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw it to Nathan Martin, who's on the second floor of our rotunda here, to talk about how he helped reintegrate the game of football.
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much for sending it out here. And like Jake said, I'm on the second floor of our rotunda. I started on the first floor. I went up to Pro Football Today, and now I'm back over here to the second floor. And I'm standing in our Road to Equality display, the exhibit that we have here in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And over my shoulder, there's a contract. I started at an accounting ledger, but there's a contract that is from the Cleveland Browns. And there was a man by the name of Marion Motley that signed with the Cleveland Browns in 1946. Him and Bill Willis, Paul Brown signed them both, and they reintegrated the game of pro football. You know, historically, there had been men like Charles Folis and Fritz Pollard that had played, but from 1933 to 1946, no African Americans were playing in the NFL. And in 1946, it was Paul Brown who kind of took that leap of faith and went ahead and signed 2 African Americans to his team. Marion Motley, coming from Canton, Ohio. So we're really, really proud of that. It's in McKinley High School here right behind us. And Bill Willis, who he had coached at Ohio State. On the West Coast, the Rams signed Kenny Washington and Woody Strode. They have really cool connections because they were college teammates of Jackie Robinson at UCLA. But, you know, if it wasn't for a man like Paul Brown, you know, taking that leap of faith and reintegrating the game of pro football, it wouldn't be what it is today. So very, very influential on the game of football, and not just in the strategies and things, you know, related to radios or face masks, but also the road to equality that we're still on today. So I'm going to send it back to Jerry, and he's going to continue on with this timeline of pro football.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Jake. And we'll be sending it right back out to them here shortly. But some interesting parallels. You know, many of us know the story of Jackie Robinson in 1947 with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But, you know, a pro football story really parallels what happened. And really, there's a lot of neat, if you will, stories that tie the two sports together. A lot of people don't realize, number one, is that, you know, Branch Rickey, who was responsible for bringing Jackie Robinson up, Branch Rickey was actually teammates with Charles Folis all the way back in the 1900s, early 1900s. So a lot of people, historians, believe because of Branch's early dealings with African Americans, that it wasn't a big deal for him personally to bring Jackie Robinson up. So there's that. But then also the Rams in the NFL. So he had the Browns in the All-American Football Conference. The Rams in the NFL actually signed 2 African American players as well, Woody Strode and Kenny Washington. Now they went to UCLA. They were also teammates. Jackie Robinson was a great football player too. They were teammates with Jackie Robinson. To take that a step further, is that Kenny Washington and Jackie Robinson were actually roommates at UCLA. So here's 2 roommates that would go on to break the color barrier in each of their respective sports. So just amazing, the 2 parallels. And honestly, Marion Motley even used to tell the story that Branch Rickey used to watch Paul Brown and the Browns the year prior and said, if these guys can play a contact sport without much incident, then Jackie can play a non-contact sport without much incident, and I'm bringing them up. So all kinds of neat parallels between a story that you may have heard of. It's called The Forgotten Four. It's in reference to those in 1946 with the Marion Motley, Bill Willis, Woody Strode, and Kenny Washington, because, and rightfully so, I mean, Jackie Robinson, football was not as popular as it is today. And so Jackie Robinson was playing in the most popular sport and got most of the recognition for what he did, breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball. But pro football did that actually the year prior. And as Nathan already alluded to, Jake did, going all the way back to 1904 with the Shelby Blues, and so in Shelby, Ohio. All right, so next helmet we're gonna look at. So we're getting closer and closer. You know, we started off here and now we're here. So some of you might have heard of the Revolution helmet, and it was by Rydell, and it was revolutionary. Then the reason being it was so revolutionary is on the inside, these white pads, they're aerosols, and you have little insertion points on the back of the helmet and the top of the helmet where you can actually pump this thing up and give it a custom fit for the players. And so we're actually going to throw it back to the museum to talk about someone who had a worn helmet, maybe a little bit older than this, but someone who played for the Bengals, one of my favorite people in the world. Jake's going to talk about him.
So you want me to talk about myself then? If I, you know, one of your favorite people in the world. Okay, cool. All right, we'll say that for another day. But, you know, talking about those Hall of Famers, there is one Cincinnati Bengal who's a Hall of Famer, and his bust is right behind me. You might have heard of him. One of the best tackles, if not the best left tackle to ever play the game of football. And that is our great friend here in Canton, Anthony Munoz. Was a great Hall of Famer, great individual. He played 13 seasons in the NFL. And out of his 13 seasons, he was an All-Pro 11 times, and he went to 11 straight Pro Bowls. So 11 to 13, you know, I'm not a mathematician, and, you know, I got decent grades, but 11 to 13, that's pretty good. I think, you know, missing 2 seasons, you know, he had some injuries he dealt with coming out of college. But he was in 1980, he was the 3rd overall pick, which is a very cool story in itself because he only played about 11 games in college due to injury. So the Bengals saw the talent there and knew he could be a great player. still drafted him 3rd overall. And another kind, as a tackle, he actually had 7 career receptions, 4 of which went for touchdowns on tackle eligible plays. So pretty good receiver as well. And he was named to the NFL 75th anniversary team, as well as most recently the NFL 100 team as well, that was just celebrated a couple years ago at the Super Bowl. So Anthony Munoz, great Hall of Famer. Now, he played a little bit before that Rydell Revolution helmet came out, but there's been so many additions to the game of football, and a lot of other Bengals who may one day have that bronze bust right here in Canton, Ohio. So now that we showcase Anthony Munoz, what I want to do is, Nathan's been running all around the museum. I haven't left the greatest room in the building. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep my camera flipped around and just kind of give you one of the most iconic looks that we have here at the Hall of Fame. And this is kind of down the one side of our Hall of Fame gallery here that encompasses the late 90s, early 2000s, late 2000s, our classes here at the Hall of Fame. So kind of one of the more iconic looks, I know in our department, one of our favorite ones, just to kind of give you a look at everything else we see here in the Hall of Fame gallery before we leave this room and throw it back to Jerry. So Jerry, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it back.
Okay, thank you, Jake, my favorite person in all the world. Appreciate that. So we are going to go to the next helmet. And now we're getting to today's helmet. So this is especially this helmet particularly. Now there's other companies, the Rydell, there's Schutt. There's a couple other companies that produce helmets. There's actually one company called Visus, where they actually use car crash technology for their helmets, where cars are designed to kind of pull in and kind of push back out, as that springiness. Well, there's a helmet by Visus. You can actually, some players wear it. I don't know if anybody wears it anymore, but when it first came out, you can actually drop the helmet and it'll bounce right back up to you. So it was a pretty cool helmet. But this is called the Speed Flex, or what we refer to as the Revolution 2.0. This is the next rendition of what that Revolution was. And so some newer innovations, obviously, on the front, you can see here, this part, obviously with head-to-head collisions, just to kind of absorb the energy of a blow to the front of the head. There's a flap here that kind of pushes in. The inside's kind of hard to see because it's black in there. But not only is there padding underneath, but then there's a liner on the outside. And these things are interchangeable. The cheek pads are interchangeable. There's pressure points on this face mask to make the face mask very easy to pop off. So if there's any neck injuries or anything like that, they need to get this helmet off. They can do that very easily. Again, there's still pumps on the side. You can pump these cheek pads up to give them a very custom fit. And so I know Nathan's back out in the gallery. Let's see, which gallery are you in? He's by the class of 2020 lockers. And so he's going to talk about those here.
Yeah, Jerry, thank you so much. I'm in the interactive gallery. It took you way too long to figure out where I was at, but I am in front of our 2020 lockers, and it's one of the coolest places in the museum. It's not the Hall of Fame gallery like Jake's been at all day, but it is really cool because it changes each and every year as we get a new Hall of Fame class. So right now we have 2020 up here. You can see some of these names as we move around. We got Steve Atwater, Isaac Bruce, Harold Carmichael, Jimbo Covert, Bill Cowher, Bobby Dillon, Cliff Harris, Winston Hill. This is the biggest class that we've ever had in Hall of Fame history. The inaugural class in 1963, 17 members. This class in 2020, we've got 20 members. Some other names: Steve Hutchinson, Edrin James, Jimmy Johnson, Alex Karras, Troy Polamalu, Steve Sable, Donnie Shell, Duke Slater, Max Speedy, Ed Sprinkle, Paul Tagliabue, and George Young. And like we've kind of talked about, I was in the Pro Football Today gallery. Jerry's showing you guys a helmet that players might use today. Here's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We're not just about the past and the history. Our vision really does say, we're not just about the past, we're about the future as well. And you can see that in our displays and the exhibits that we have. We want to keep the rich history of pro football as it's happening here in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And this exhibit is just one way that we do that. And here in the next couple of months, it'll be changing to our latest and our newest class, the class of 2021. So that's all I have for you guys down here in the interactive exhibit, but I'm going to send it back to Jerry as we've got a couple of closing remarks for you guys.
Okay, and I think my teammates are going to be hustling up to the Lombardi Trophy and the Super Bowl rings real quick so we can show you those, and then we're going to close things out. So as you guys can see, over the past 130 years, we've gone from this to this. And so these are the stories that we talk about. And I heard one of the fellows here today said that he's been here before. Maybe more of you have been as well. But these are the kind of stories that we tell about. stories about Super Bowl, stories about jerseys, stories about all kinds of different events and happenings and occurrences that took place in pro football. And we arrange these stories in a particular order. But the cool thing about this is that what is on display when you see artifacts like this, what is on display is only about 1% of our collection. We have about, in our three-dimensional collection, so our artifacts, we have about 40,000 artifacts in our collection. And then in what we refer to as our two-dimensional collection, it's not necessarily completely two-dimensional, but flat objects, paper objects, we have about 40 million pages of documents. And so we are considered the #1 resource for pro football history. And we kind of have a saying here, if you can't find it here, you can't find it anywhere. It's not necessarily true, but for the most part, it is true. So just to kind of close things out, we've got two galleries we want to go to, two of the most iconic things when you win the Super Bowl, the ring and the trophy. And so we're going to go to Nathan and Jake to close those out. And then we're going to go to questions from you guys. So Jake and Nathan, go for it.
All right, I'll go first because I think I'm set up. I don't know if Jake's set up yet, but we are in the Super Bowl gallery, the Lamar Hunt Super Bowl gallery, and I'm standing in front of our Super Bowl ring display. One of the coolest, you're just kind of surprised. You see how from Super Bowl I, it was pretty small, and now you see some of these gaudy rings that the Patriots and the Chiefs have out here, and it really is like Jerry said, it's something that all players aspire to get. And in a lot of ways, they aspire to get a Super Bowl ring more than they would even a Hall of Fame bronze bust, because it's just a testament to the hard work that it took, not just for them as an individual, but for the entire team. And we're honored to actually have all these rings on display here. And it's been our honor and our pleasure to show you guys all of this stuff, the great, rich history and the artifacts that we have on display here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And while the rings have changed and the helmets have changed, what Jerry talked about at the beginning, the life lessons that the game of football teaches have not changed, from the days of, Charles Follis and Pudge Heffelfinger to the days of Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to send it to Jake now to show you guys the Lombardi Trophy.
All right, first I want to apologize because it's going to be a little echoey, a little loud here. We got a lot of great videos playing, but yes, I'm in front of the iconic Vince Lombardi Trophy that goes out to the Super Bowl champion each year. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a replica, but once that one is finished by Tiffany's for the next Super Bowl, we're going to have it on display right here in Canton, Ohio. Our president and CEO, David Baker, puts it on display. And then about a week before the Super Bowl next year, that's down in Los Angeles, we're going to pack that Super Bowl trophy up, ship it out to LA. So next time you see a Super Bowl, you see that Super Bowl champion hold that trophy up, it was on display right here in Canton, Ohio. I just want to give you a little bit, because we see this trophy, we see how cool it is, but it's kind of a cool story how it came about. In 1966, commissioner of the NFL at the time, whose name was Pete Rozelle, one of the greatest individuals in all of sports, was actually at a lunch meeting with the president and CEO of Tiffany & Company, the great jewelry company. And at that meeting, the president of the jewelry company actually sketched what this trophy would look like on a cocktail napkin. And the Vince Lombardi Trophy was born. It stands 22 inches tall. It weighs about 7 pounds. And it's made of sterling silver and depicts that football sitting on a tee ready to kick off. One of the most iconic images in any of sports. We know how important winning the Lombardi Trophy is. And we are so happy to have it on display here in Canton, Ohio. And again, I want to echo what Nathan and Jerry both said. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your class today. We really appreciate allowing us to get out in the museum and talk a little bit about the great history of the game of football. Now, I'm gonna throw a little dirt here. Nathan and Jerry, they never played a down of football in their lives, and yet these values impact them just as much as they do NFL players. Now, I played a little bit. I retired after high school because, well, I'll be honest, it just wasn't good enough to play in college. But the life lessons I learned in the locker room in my 4 years of high school football, I still use today here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So these life lessons, they are great. They do transcend sports, and we're so happy that we get to be able to talk about them day in and day out here at the Hall of Fame. So that's it from Nathan and I in the museum. Throw it back to Jerry to wrap everything up.
All right. Thank you, Jake and Nathan. I was really trying to think of something crafty to come back with you, with Jake, about that, but the wheels were turning, but just nothing was coming out. So I'm going to just leave it at that. So if you guys have questions, feel free to type those in the chat. We have, looks like about 10 minutes or so. I want to save for you guys to ask those questions. Anything in particular, feel free to go ahead and do that. And I don't know if Liz or Jeff, if you guys have anything you want to comment in here as we went.
Well, aside from the fact that you guys are a fantastic team, and I can imagine just what a great day would be if once we can really start traveling again and get out to Ohio, because you're the A team. I have a question for you guys. I mean, maybe Jerry, you can answer this. As Jake was just talking in that with the Lombardi Trophy, the one that Tom was tossing to Gronk and over the water, was that the real thing? Was that a replica? If it went into the water, what's it worth? How do you what was that about? And what was the feeling of the NFL and the Hall of Fame when you saw that going on live?
You know, I cringe because it was the actual real thing. So it was the one that we actually had on display here throughout the NFL season. And so yeah, and so the worth, I mean, you'd have to just figure what the price of silver is per ounce, and multiply it by the weight is about 7 pounds. But obviously the fact that it's a actual trophy, you know, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers obviously just makes it priceless as well. But let's see. I see somebody, if the trophy is dropped in the water, does it float? I don't even want to test that. I don't even know. I think we'll just say pass on that one. My guess is it would sink, but again, I'm not sure. But yes, that was the actual trophy that was on display. And it's really neat, the fact that we can actually have the trophy here throughout the season. Because I've been here for 21 years. It wasn't always that way. We always just had a replica. But maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the NFL agreed to start letting us have that on display. So fans can come up within, I mean, literally that glass, it's only, I mean, you're 4 inches away from the actual trophy that you get to see, that you see so iconically as hoisted up right after the Super Bowl. So yeah, so that's a great question. A great question. Because when I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's scary. So let's see, were those rings display made for the Hall of Fame, or they once by winning player? Those are replicas that we made. They're actually real gold, but we get cubic zirconias in ours, so we don't get actual diamonds in ours. But typically the NFL, just some background on that, I think it's, I want to say it's 5,000. Maybe Jake and Nathan are listening and they can correct me on this. I think it's 5,000 that the NFL gives, up to 100. They pay for 150 rings, up to $5,000. Now, some of these rings, you know, could be 10, 15, $20,000. The owners kick in the rest. Every team's different as to how they divvy out the rings. Obviously, all the players, all the front office staff, things like that. But I know for me personally, I've got good friends that work for the Steelers that I've known for years. And the Rooney family actually made a ring for every one of their staff members. So every single from the janitor to the CEO and the president, you know. And so so I know they made it was a scaled back version, but for the Steelers there was a team version, the player version, which the coaches and then the front office and player personnel probably got those. But then everybody else, there was a male version, a female version of a smaller Super Bowl ring. So, and I think most of the teams probably fall in line with that. But you're talking, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a directory for an NFL team. I mean, these staffs are huge. I mean, some of these teams have 200-300 employees on their team. So purchasing, in addition to the 53 plus man roster, the additional 20-25 coaches, you know, you're talking about buying, you know, in some cases, maybe 200-300, even 400 rings at $10, $15, $25,000 can get pretty expensive. But, you know, when your team's worth, you know, $5 billion, you know, you can kind of afford that, you know. So I don't know if you guys know the story about the Giants. The Giants, the Mara family actually purchased the Giants in 1925 for $500. The Giants are now worth roughly, you know, if you go to Forbes, you can look at team valuations, but roughly about $3 to $4 billion are worth the Giants. So pretty good return on investment there. Let's see. Let's see some of these other, what player received the most votes to enter the Hall of Fame? It's really not a most. We have a selection committee of 48 media representatives. And so what happens is that the selection process is that there's about 100, typically so you guys can nominate someone. So if you're from Cleveland and you're like, Bernie Kosar needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And this is, you know, you could nominate Bernie Kosar to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it starts off with a preliminary list each year, usually around 100 to 120 people on that list. It eventually gets dwindled down to 25, then to 15, then 10. Then eventually we make the narrow it down to the actual class that Saturday of the Super Bowl. And we make that typically that announcement on national TV, on NFL Network, and then it's also at the NFL Honor Show on Saturday. Obviously, that honor show wasn't this year because of everything going on with COVID, but nonetheless, that's where it goes down to. So the last chunk of people, when it gets narrowed down to 5, actually, it's pretty much a yes/no vote on those guys. And you have to receive an 80% yes vote. And every year there's a minimum number of guys that are trying, up to 8 is a maximum. And there's been a lot of guys like Peyton Manning this year that I'm assuming received all 48 media representatives voted Peyton Manning in. So great question. Does Putin still have the ring he swiped? I try not to even say the word Putin just to keep myself safe. So I'm not sure. Steve asked, what entity owns and controls the content of the NFL Hall of Fame? We're actually a separate entity from the National Football League. We are a 501c3. We're a nonprofit educational institution. So we work separately from the National Football League. Primarily, our revenue is generated through admissions, sponsors, merchandise, and things like that. Certainly, we receive some funding from the NFL, certainly some help throughout the years. And we have a Hall of Fame game where we get TV revenue from that. We certainly work very closely with the NFL and its 32 club members. We kind of consider ourselves like maybe a cousin of the NFL, where the teams are the brothers and sisters. So we do work very closely, but we are separate from the National Football League. We are our own entity. Let's see, which team has the most members elected? It's actually the Chicago Bears, and it's a little unfair because the Bears are one of the oldest teams. I think followed by the Packers, the Steelers are up there, the Browns are up there, but the Bears have the most Hall of Famers. How many people come through the museum each year? About 250,000 each year from all 50 states, from 30 to 40 different foreign countries a year come through our museum. So, and we're hoping that now that we're building a village, if you guys have, just search Hall of Fame Village, you'll see, there's going to be an outdoor water park in the next 4 or 5 years. It's going to be a football themed or indoor water park, football themed indoor water park. There are a whole bunch of practice fields we built. We built a sports complex. We're going to end up having 10 football fields here to do field sports, which include not only football, but soccer and lacrosse as well. We have a number of things. We're building a hotel here. We're building a center for excellence. We're still planning on building a retirement center for NFL legends here. So all kinds of cool and exciting things that are coming up here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's about a 5 or 6 year projection on when that'll be done, but we're still moving forward with that. Are there teams that aren't represented in the Hall of Fame? I would have to think of that. Because I think the Jaguars might be one right now. I have to go back and think because the Panthers just got someone. So just so you guys know, unlike the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I've been to Cooperstown. I love the Baseball Hall of Fame as well. It's just an absolutely, the town is just absolutely amazing. I went there in the fall too, if you can imagine that. So it was absolutely beautiful in the fall. But they're not they don't have to select what team they're inducted in. They're honored under any exhibits we have here that honor teams. What you'll see is someone that's in bold means that they played primarily their career there. And if they're not in bold, then maybe they just spent a year there or something like that. I see Jake jump back on. I think he's going to chime in as well.
Yeah, Jerry, thanks. So you're talking about those teams that don't have anybody in. The Panthers kind of have been that team but Kevin Green, Bill Polian both had great influence on their organization. So we can kind of check them off the list. But if you want to look at the two that don't, Jacksonville Jaguars and Houston Texans are the teams that really don't have anybody that had a huge impact with their teams. Now you see a guy like Tony Baselli, who's been up for induction the past couple of years. He's kind of looking like that next maybe Jaguar that gets in. Texans being such a new franchise, it's really hard to see who might be in that. We got great wide receiver Andre Johnson. Look at a player that just left their team like J.J. Watt, maybe one day down the road. But there's a few guys coming up that might help out. But right now, those are really the two teams that really don't have any representation as far as Hall of Famers here at the Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Jake. Yeah, I was thinking the Texans as well. I think that was the only two, but yeah. So the next question is, do any players ever just drop by the museum? Not that often. I mean, Hall of Famers, yes, they're here. I mean, we're here quite a bit throughout the year. Programs we have. Jake and I oversee, and Nathan, since we're the education department, we do programs actually with our Hall of Famers. We actually give opportunities for students to actually connect with guys like Jim Brown and where they can connect over this technology and actually ask them questions. And we moderate it here in our studio, or we'll have an event down here with, we just had Kevin Green not too long ago, who just, you guys may know that Kevin's a dear friend of ours who just passed away not too long ago. tragically. And so not even tragically, but just unexpectedly. And so we just had Kevin here. We had 300 kids live where they could talk to him. So we do programs with the Hall of Famers. Jake and I have flown all across the country. I've flown from White Plains, New York, did a program with Art Monk just in White Plains at a high school there, and flown to Honolulu, Hawaii, and done a program with Mike Haynes out there. So we get to do a lot of programs with our Hall of Famers. So they're always out and about and doing programs with us, whether it's here at the Hall of Fame or across the country. As far as regular players, typically not. Now we did Tom Brady, the Patriots came by. Bill Belichick's a huge fan of ours. He's a big historian. So he's on our part of our senior selection committee and those. So he's very adamant. He loves the history of the game. Just a big fan of ours here at the Hall of Fame. So he's brought his team in a couple times. So like players like Tom Brady have been by here. Let's see. Do any players ever just drop by? Liz asks, "Can you get us a Hall of Famer to talk to you guys?" That might be difficult. So, but it's it's always worth the ask, right, Liz? So never hurts to ask. So, do you honor football broadcasters? If yes, who? We have, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There haven't been any necessarily broadcasters at this point that we honor. Now we do have a display that kind of honors those folks that have had an impact, but there is a contributor category. So you can be inducted as a player or a coach, and you have to be retired for 5 years for each one of those to actually be eligible to be enshrined. But then there's a contributor category, and there we go. There's some displays. I think Jake is actually going there. Jake, you want to unmute there so it pops up?
Yep, I'm here. So we got the Dick McCann Award as well as the Pete Rozelle Award that go out to a lot of different media members, broadcasters within the game.
Yep. So we honor them in that way. And then also there's been guys like the Sable family, Ed and Steve Sable, both are enshrined into the have been inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So just their impact that NFL Films had, just in the way that they really revolutionized how football was shown, the inside access and stuff like that. The legendary voice, you guys, I will not do it any justice, but the legendary voice of John Facenda, from the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, that I know that was terrible. You guys are probably gonna be like, that was bad, but all right. So any other questions?
I just want to ask you one question. In looking at some of the history of football, I don't know if you have something like this in the museum at the hall. Do you have any history of the great stadiums? For instance, like Cleveland used to play at that municipal stadium. The Yankee Stadium was used by the Giants for many years. Shea Stadium was used for the Jets. Of course, that pretty much has ended now because of, I guess, the way fields were torn up in overlapping seasons. But is there any history of the great stadiums and the coming and going of them?
I would say they're not on display. I mean, we do have some old photos that are of different stadiums, just in a variety of displays. I think one actually goes back to even it was an old stadium that was I think it was in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just some of the old fields that they used to play in, like before football was, when football was much like Leatherheads, the movie, is this backyard game. Is kind of, because I don't know if you guys know that football was not very highly thought of back in those days. I mean, Red Grange actually used to joke that he'd be more highly thought of had he joined the Capone mob in Chicago than the Bears, because college football is glorified, pro football is not. But no, on display, there's no display on it. But what I bet we do have is we have a massive photo collection. So of 6 million images. And so my guess is we have in our archives of those 40 million documents, we probably have a file on each one of those stadiums with photos in there. So that would be my guess, that we do have that archived, that if somebody was going to a historian was going to come and do research about historic stadiums, we'd be able to easily pull that out of our archives and present that to the researchers so they could do their story, their research or whatever. Because we pretty much get researchers here almost on a weekly, not so much right now because of COVID, but on a typical year, researchers here coming each week, from a high school kid doing a book report to the History Channel wanting to look at the history of stadiums or something like that. So, and then everywhere in between.
And just one last question. On one of your promo clips that I saw on the internet, you had something about Joe Namath. Do you have some sort of display or some sort of a thing with Joe Namath there in his Super Bowl?
We actually have a holographic theater that you walk in. It's state of the art. It's a $5 million theater that you walk in, and Joe Namath actually walks out as a holographic theater. Joe Namath did this for us, and so he was the person that got to do it. So he's actually a hologram that comes out, actually talks to people and actually talks about the Hall of Fame values. Now, we also have a Super Bowl III display. I see Jake is on that too. I see him walking over there. So Jake, you want to unmute real quick?
Yeah. So we got, the famous quote is, I guarantee it. So we kind of pay homage to that here in our Super Bowl gallery, and the Jets win in Super Bowl III.
Great, thank you.
So thank you. And so yeah, that the holographic theater is state of the art, and it's really cool because he cues up as he comes out and stands right in front of you and talks about. But it's called Game for Life, or that theater, and it again reemphasizes those same values that we were talking about at the beginning. So it goes through, Curtis Martin. It goes through his testimony, his story of how he came in the NFL. Curtis Martin came from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of the poorest neighborhoods and one of the poorest streets in that neighborhood in the country, and how he had overcame like 30 family members and friends had been shot and killed throughout by the time he was 18. I mean, Jim Kelly's battle with cancer. We chronicled that. Jim Brown and overcoming racial boundaries during the 50s and 60s, and so these guys that get to tell their stories. But Joe Namath is the host of that, so it's really cool. It's really neat, really special.
Okay, it's been really great. Any other question left? I don't know if that Mike's one was about the archives. Was that?
Yeah,
one?
it's not. It is being digitized, but I'm not sure to what extent or how much of our collection has been digitized. But it's not available just for any random fan to come in and connect onto it. But if somebody was doing research, they connect with our archivist, and I'm not too sure to what extent that information is accessible right now.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I just can't thank you enough. I think all of our members probably, I know the ones that had conflicts today that are going to see the recording are probably going to be so jealous that they didn't see you live, because it was so much fun. I hope that everybody else out there enjoyed it. Let's give them a big round of applause from OLLI. We got our little, we have to use our little reactions, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll give one.
Everybody's
I'll
muted.
give one back to you guys. There we go. I'll clap right back to you
There
guys.
you go.
Thank you. Well done.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you again to you and to Jake and to Martin. And, we just, I'm sorry, Nathan, I keep thinking Martin, but we thank you, and we look forward to getting out there someday and really enjoying it.
Well, if you guys do, make sure you contact us so we can make sure to come say hello to you guys.
Right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Take care, everyone. Have a blessed day. Thank you.